Welcome to Reigniting You, the show that explores a variety of topics and timely issues for making successful mid to late career transitions with a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment for the next phase of your career and life, regardless of your age. Now, here's your host, Lisa Downs.
Welcome to Reigniting You, where we talk all things career transition for those age 40 plus. I'm Lisa Downs, Seattle-based career and retirement transition coach. So happy to be here with you today, and our producer, Eric. Hey, Eric, what's going on today?
Hey, good afternoon, Lisa. Happy mid-December here, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, Christmas coming up and
All right.
New Year's and all that stuff. Are you all prepared?
Pretty much.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
pretty much. I hit the Amazon wish list for my husband and buy a few other things. And I always had the tendency to buy stuff for myself on sale. So I do a little Lisa shopping too. So, but
well, hey,
feeling
if
pretty
the price
prepared.
is right, that's the way to do it.
That's
for sure.
right. Got to hit the sales. How about
That's
you?
right. Well, ideally, I'd love to be as organized as you two are. I love that idea of, the wish list or watch
Yeah.
list from your significant other, so you don't have to beg them to get you a list.
Yeah.
As seems to be the case before this, but I've never gotten to that level of being that organized, unfortunately. But one of these days we'll get there.
Well, it takes a lot of the emotional angst out of gift giving, because then you're pretty much assured you'll get something that you want. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we've got a great show on tap for today. My guest is Monica McNeal, an executive, consultant, and advocate for veterans and military spouses. And we'll talk with Monica a bit later in the show. First, though, are a few career-related stories from the last couple weeks. According to the Sacramento Bee, workers getting goods to millions of shoppers face a new challenge as we're in the middle of the holiday season. Intense staffing shortages and historically high levels of job turnover. More than 3% of workers in trade, transportation, and utilities, a category that includes retail workers such as cashiers, stock clerks, and delivery truck drivers, quit their job in August, higher than at any point in the last 20 years, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Among retail workers specifically, 4.4% quit in September, resulting in additional retail workers being pushed over the edge to leave. Meanwhile, workers and advocates are pressuring companies such as Amazon to improve working conditions for their warehouse workers, who are often stretched to the limit during the holiday shopping season. Several public health groups and practitioners sent a letter to Amazon recently calling for the company to prohibit inhumane and hazardous production standards. Bloomberg reports that there were close to 20 million active online job postings in August, according to the site ZipRecruiter. That's a staggering increase from the approximately 10 million active postings at the start of the year. Even with this, it's not so easy for people to find the right job. Companies are increasingly using algorithms to weed through applications and maybe overlooking good candidates. In one example, a Seattle resident applied for 146 jobs between January 2020 and May 2021, got 27 follow-ups, did late-stage interviews for 12 positions, and ultimately received 2 offers before choosing her current role. Some companies often take 3+ months to hire a candidate and typically interview 5 or more people for a single role. Also, many organizations end up hiring from within, making the prospects of landing a job as an external applicant that much more challenging. So, Eric, what are your thoughts on these first couple of stories today?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to see all this, up and down in the job market for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And who knows when it'll ever settle down. But it's good to see that people are still getting hired and the unemployment rate continues to dip.
Yep.
So I think, we've got plenty of reasons to be positive about it anyway.
Yeah, I think so. And it is interesting, and just to see, what's happening. I don't envy retail workers, anyone working in retail or logistics or shipping or, anything like that this time of year, because it's just such a flood. And, it's no wonder that some are getting a bit fried, a bit burned out too, if they especially if they're seeing a lot of coworkers leave, and then that's that much more work put on them, chances are. So,
Absolutely.
not surprising
Yeah.
there. But yeah, and it is still, I find, because I take a look at job postings and, of course, a lot of people I work with, they're in the job market, and I've been finding that, it certain industries, it's still pretty highly competitive. Yeah, it's just interesting, and I think we're still gonna be seeing a lot of different changes going on up and down with the job market still well into 2022, so,
I think you're right.
yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye on it, right? See what happens. Watch this space. Here's a couple other stories for you. Reported by the Chicago Tribune, a resurgence in business travel is expected to happen in 2022 as organizations get tired of virtual meetings, even with the Omicron COVID variant looming. Only about 38% of business travelers surveyed by Bank of America thought they would travel significantly less than before the pandemic, while 31% disagreed, according to a November report. Even as some companies say they plan to pull back on business trips, airline executives were optimistic about a pickup in corporate travel next year on calls discussing their earnings in October. At American Airlines, almost two-thirds of corporate customers are doing at least some essential international business travel, and the airline expects business travel revenues to rebound to 2019 levels by the end of 2022. The Global Business Travel Association was slightly more cautious, forecasting a 38% increase in global business travel spending next year, with a full return to pre pandemic spending by 2024, according to a November news release. Lastly, as reported in the Seattle Times, in the world of entrepreneurship, Titan Casket, founded by Josh Siegel, an Amazon alum, and Scott Ginsberg, is a new direct to customer casket company with the goal of decreasing funeral costs for consumers and being what they call the Warby Parker of caskets. Like what Warby Parker has done with direct online sales of eyeglasses, and Casper, Helix, and others have done with buying mattresses directly online. Titan Caskets aims to simplify the casket buying process at a much lower cost than what's found at standard funeral homes. While estimates vary, markups between 200 and 500% on caskets are common in the funeral industry. Though consumers have had the right under federal law to buy their own caskets, almost all of the 1.5 million people who were buried in 2020 in the U.S. were laid to rest in a funeral home bought casket. Titan Caskets focus on timely delivery and customer care while offering caskets priced from $699 to $2,499 is working. The company quadrupled in size over the past year. So, Eric, thoughts on these stories here?
Well, I think anything that lowers the cost of a funeral is a great thing.
Yeah.
It's really
It's
expensive to die
it
in this
is
country.
expensive to die.
Yeah. I
Very
don't
much so.
I like the idea that Titan Casket has here. I'm not sure if they want to be the Warby Parker of caskets. Go Warby Parker, their whole thing, and it's really hard for me to say that for some reason, but their whole thing was sending out a bunch of different glasses for you to
Oh,
try
right,
on,
try them on.
and then you mail them back.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
sure,
don't know if you could do that
sending
with
you 10
caskets.
caskets that you can try
Yeah.
out at your house and then ship back to them is such a
Yeah.
great model. But I do like the idea, and there's of course the option now in some places, Washington State being one of them, where you can do a more natural
Mhm.
burial without a casket at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's good too.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you don't always have to be pumped with chemicals, put in a box 6 feet under.
That's right.
I know that's the tradition, but I think it's a good idea to
Yeah.
reassess traditions every
Yeah.
now and again.
I know Chris and I are intrigued by that, the compost method. Yeah, kinda that more natural method, and
Same.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and most of our relatives have gone, with cremation. But yeah, I think it's interesting to give people those options. Yeah, it is just very expensive, and, it seems outrageous in terms of the cost to me, and, Yeah, it's interesting, but yeah, I think, it's a good thing to have different options and see what happens with these guys for sure. Yeah, kind of fascinating to see where this goes and how they do, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and interesting to hear that they think that business travel is going to be back up so much because, COVID has shown that you really don't have to travel to do business,
Yeah.
So you would think that would take even, with people feeling safer with the vaccines and stuff, you would think that just the cost of
Mhm.
travel and the effort and time would make people think, well, maybe we want to keep continue having that scaled back unless
Yeah.
it's absolutely necessary. But I of course the airlines want to make money too, so it's interesting to see. I'm just surprised that companies would be so gung ho about getting back to that.
Yeah, yeah, I it makes me wonder, the big consulting firms, so you think about kind of those big firms like Deloitte and KPMG and Pricewaterhouse and Ernst& and Young, and it makes me because they send their consultants on the road so much traditionally. A lot of their consultants are just road warriors, and it makes me curious about, you wonder how much money they saved, you know, to their bottom line over the last couple of years just with the travel coming to a halt, and, I'm curious about not really sure who I might know who works in those organizations, but I'm just kinda wondering if they're starting to see a bit of a ramp up again or if they're gonna stick with the virtual meetings and put up with a bit more Zoom fatigue.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there is
yeah,
something for face to face
there
for
is,
sure.
yep.
There absolutely is. But, when companies are all about the bottom line, to be honest. So if they can save money by not, sending people across country, it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you have any trips on the horizon?
I'm thinking of potentially in 2022 taking a couple trips, but that's all gonna, depend on how these variants kind of play
Yep.
out, and will, depend on how much time I can get away from doing my job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're just gonna play it by ear.
Yeah,
I do have a credit I need to use by the end of 2022,
same.
so by about a year from now. That was from 2020 when I had to cancel a trip to go to a conference out in Michigan. And it was
Yeah,
a pricey ticket to get from
yeah.
here to Ann Arbor, Michigan. So
Wow.
it's not like there
Right. You don't
a lot of
want to miss out
direct
on that. Yeah.
flights, and so it's a pretty good credit, but yeah, it's like now I gotta figure out, well, how the heck am I gonna use it? Because I know that conference is still gonna be virtual next fall and not don't really have any immediate plans, here, and
Well, maybe some, fun vacation could come
maybe,
of it.
yeah, maybe it'd be good because we stuck to car trips in state this year, so we did not go too far afield, but,
Same.
yeah, yeah, interesting. But thanks, Eric. And it's time for our first break. So when we come back, I'll introduce our guest for the show, Monica McNeal, who's here to talk about her career path as well as redefining our careers and more.
Are you feeling challenged or frustrated without a plan for what's next in your career and life? Are you seeing writings on the wall for needing to make a mid to late career change and don't know how or what to do? Coach Lisa Downs of New Aspect Coaching can guide you to what's next, providing a fresh perspective and supporting you to create a clear and compelling vision for your future and a plan to move forward. Call Lisa at 425-216-3015. That's 425-216-3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that focuses on all aspects of making mid to late career transitions. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. A note that you can catch the show Voices of Experience with host Paul Casey this Wednesday at 3 p.m. here on KIXI. Voices shines a light on people with experience in their fields of travel, public affairs, adventure, health, and fitness, with an emphasis on sustaining your own business. That's Voices of Experience this Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Monica McNeal. Monica is a seasoned executive who has spent 30 plus years in corporate roles and nonprofits. She has flexed her career over the years with 17 different promotions and 7 geographical moves with one company, held key roles in other corporations, reinvented her career focus, and spent time in the nonprofit space. She has redefined her career in multiple industries and roles. She believes in branding your transferable skills and knowing your value, which you can bring to companies and organizations on day one. She has shifted her mindset from "Am I a good fit?" to "Do I belong?" Hi, Monica. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Lisa. It's nice to be here, and I hope you're having a great day.
Yeah, for sure. And I always like to start with guests by learning more about your particular career path and journey. So, what's the story of how you've gotten to where you are in your career over time?
It was nothing that I expected or planned. Let's start with that. I was very fortunate. I spent almost 24 years at Nordstrom. And I always say within those 24 years, as you mentioned, I had 17 different jobs. So I never felt like I was doing anything long term. I always we moved 7 times. So I had a lot of different roles, anything ranging from merchandising, then I was in the operations side. And then I've gone back into merchandising. In the last 6 years of my career actually brought me to Seattle. And then at that point, I flexed and went into the wholesale industry, which is a pretty common transition from retail. You go to wholesale. And at that point, I kind of had a really fun career. I was a VP of sales and I commuted to New York every 2 weeks, which was just a lot of fun and exciting. And I felt very glamorous and sexy and all the above. And while I was in that job, I had specialty stores. So I kind of did a little bit of my retail background. I still had a little hands in the merchandising, but mostly it was a sales role. And then after that role, I went into another wholesale position as a VP of sales. This time it was West Coast based and didn't have to commute to New York anymore. And then, of course, I had to do something crazy again. And then I took a job in Portland and commuted to Portland just during the week. I had an apartment in the Pearl District. And once again, I thought I was really cool, sexy, and hip. And then one day my husband said, "Have you ever thought about coming back here to Seattle and possibly living with me every day of the week?" And so I did that. And that's when I decided I would really flex. And I had a personal situation happen that I really felt I needed to give back to the community. So I went into the nonprofit space. And it was a huge, huge transition because at this point, I had never been in the nonprofit space. My population was the military family community. So that was a really big shift because I am not a veteran. And I think I was really challenged in the beginning of what is she doing in this space? She knows nothing about it. She's never served. And I felt like I had to wear my resume on my wrist and my arm and everywhere so people could go, "Oh, she is a little credible. We might have to take her serious." So over the last, we'll say 10 plus years, I have made a little name for myself in this community. And then after I left the nonprofit role, I took a job as a contractor, and I had never been a contractor before. And that was with the Microsoft Military Affairs team. So I've kind of done this fashion, lots and lots of different jobs. And then from there, I went, to, still in the merchandising, but then it was really different. I was a contractor and a consultant. And so I've done a lot of different fun things over the years.
That's great. And just to follow up on that, wondering what did you find the difference was between being a contractor and a regular employee?
I am just really blessed. I had an unbelievable contracting company. So I had health insurance, I had a 401k, and what I didn't have is going to all stupid meetings that didn't pertain to my contract. So you didn't get sucked into stuff you didn't have anything that you didn't have to really know about. And I didn't get stock options, so but it was a kind of, you knew it was going to end also. And that's not all bad either. It kind of forces me to somewhere along the road go, okay, what do I want to do next? Or do I want to see if I can renew a contract or do something similar? So it kind of gave me a good start and stop date.
That's cool. And throughout your career journey, what have you found were some key lessons that really stand out for you?
Definitely build your network before you need it. So, you're always networking, and I've been in sales, so I always feel I'm selling something. If nothing else, I'm selling myself, but definitely have your network. Stay current. I mean, it's easy to get comfortable and not thinking you have to learn new platforms or you don't need to learn technology or you're just comfortable because I think as we age, we potentially have had a pretty successful career and you get comfortable. So I would never, don't get comfortable. I hate the phrase, but it works today. And that is really be a lifelong learner because you're going to have to learn no matter what company you go to. They have new processes, new procedures, new platforms. So stay current and relative.
Mhm. And what have you found that has helped you stay current and to keep that learning orientation?
Well, COVID was really good for the last couple of years because there's all sorts of crazy free seminars. I signed up for masterclass. I use LinkedIn Learning at
Mm.
least twice a week. Before I was probably doing it more. But there's so many free services and college courses are free. And I'm at an age now, I actually get to go to college for free. So there's a lot of fun classes to take. I think that's really staying important. Get out and, be in the industry where you want to be also. So talk to people, find mentors, take that class on Python that you know nothing about to go, oh, I'm going to be a non-technical program manager, but I might need to know something about Python.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Good advice. And I'm also curious about what was particularly helpful that got you through times of your career transitions, times of change, whether it was specific decisions you made, resources you drew upon, people who supported you.
Definitely don't go it alone. I don't think career transitioning or looking for a job, it's got to be probably the worst thing that I have to do in my life. There's maybe a couple of things before, on top of that, but it's nothing you can do alone. You need support. You need a mentor. You need someone who is brutally honest with you. And that's also hard to find. Sometimes it's actually a stranger or a coach like yourself. I
Mhm.
hired a career coach. I needed someone to kind of keep me accountable. And I'm really detail oriented, accountable. I schedule my entire life. But when it came to me, that's a whole different person. And I always tell my husband that I can't listen to my own advice at this point. I need someone to say, hey, Monica, or pump me up when I'm really getting that rejection letter that I thought I had a shot at it, or I thought I had done well and it didn't go that well. So I always say, don't do it alone. I mean, looking for a job is really difficult. And even if you're really good at strategically doing it, I
Mm.
mean, those that spray and pray, I don't know how they apply for like 100 jobs a week. I don't know what
Yeah.
you would do with that. That's crazy because then you have a chance of getting 100 rejection letters. So I have no interest in doing that.
Right. Yeah, it's like you've gotta have develop that hard shell or, to let the rejection roll as much as you can because, yeah, it is really hard and, it's not easy, and especially when you just feel like all that's happening is getting the next rejection email or letter. And what have you found for you, when you, have had to go through that? What have you found just to ensure that you engage in your self-care, kinda keep a positive mindset?
I can definitely say I keep a real tight schedule, even though currently I'm not working. I still have my day is completely scheduled out, and if that means in my calendar it says I'm going for a walk, I go for a walk. If that means I need to get up, I've learned to be a better meditator over COVID. I felt like I needed to personally get in touch with myself, and so that was one thing my practice became better. And you have to take care of yourself and you got to be at your top of your game. So if you're not presenting the best you, and then other people can figure that out right away also.
Yeah. Were there ever times when you regretted a career decision or going down a certain road?
Yeah, as much as I love every job I had at Nordstrom, I don't think I managed my career. It managed me. And there was a period one year, my boys went to three different middle schools, one in Minnesota, one in California, one in Seattle.
Wow.
And so that means we had basically bought a house, sold a house all within a year.
Wow.
And when we moved to Seattle, I have three children. And I said, listen, this is it. No matter what happens, we will never move again. So as exciting as that career was at Nordstrom and rewarding and all the fun stuff, it also put me at an age where I probably should have thought about that a little bit more of when I would be leaving. And because there are some, as I always tell people, there's key earning years. So, there's some really good years you make a lot of money. Then at some point in your career, you're not as valuable. And I always say you expire at some point in your career too, not for a reason, you expire. And yeah, I would say I probably didn't manage that. It managed me. And on a personal note, as I always say, my kids all survived my career changes. My marriage did not.
Mm,
So I didn't manage my life that well.
gotcha. Yeah, that's tough. And considering that, our careers are marathons, not sprints, and we can say the same for when it comes to job search. For those who are in career transition, what recommendations do you have for how they can stay motivated and really persevere through it?
I'm a big, big believer in mentors.
Mm.
They keep me honest. Some of them have known me a long time, so I always say they know the new Monica, the new improved Monica, and maybe who knows where the next Monica is going to come in. So mentors are really good. I also like talking to strangers. I think the LinkedIn platform is so powerful that you're only one person away from really getting connected with somebody that you might want to talk to about their career. And I also think when I talk to a stranger, they're brutally honest because there's no emotional connection. So they can quickly say something about my LinkedIn profile or my picture or whatever the case may be, or my path, why I think I can do something and I have no training. So I'm a big believer in mentors.
Yeah. And for those who may be reluctant to step out, and extend themselves in terms of contacting people on LinkedIn or reaching out for connecting or informational interviews, what would you suggest that they do to get over that hump?
Once again, I'd start with your current network and have them do the introductions if that's easier, so you're not kind of doing that cold call. And then you've got kind of the endorsement from if I ask you, Lisa, to introduce me to so and so, then at least I feel it's coming with a little bit of credibility, and feel a little bit at ease that possibly this is your friend.
Yeah.
And I think that might make it just a little bit easier in that transition of talking to strangers or getting those informational interviews.
Yeah, that definitely helps pave the way, right? So leveraging those connections you already have um and you're, drawing on that and not being afraid, right? It's like I say, that what's the worst that could happen? They'll say no. It's okay. And but not to let fear or trepidation that you're bothering someone or don't really know them to hold you back.
And I use the rule of three. So if I reach out to someone, if they don't, two times I reach out, if I don't get a response, I kind of go, maybe they're way too busy. Not that they didn't like me or they're rejecting me. I just assume they're too busy.
Yeah. That's kinda my magic number too. It's like with anything, it's like I'll follow up, 3 times or, contact someone 3 times and then that's it. So I think I use that too. That's a great rule. So thanks for sharing that. And also curious about who has been a big influence on your career in your life that you would say contributes to who you are now or to your work?
I have unbelievable friends of 35 plus years, and professionally, I am still in contact with people that I hired back in, 89.
Mm.
And and those are through good and bad times as a boss, but I am still in contact with them. So I think that just those people who kind of know me in one setting, I always say with one hat on, then I have friends who know me with another hat. And then I say I've got the mom hat, the Monica hat, the blah, blah, blah hat. So I think surrounding yourself with a wide variety of people keeps your life interesting also. And I think what happens sometimes, as I always say, sometimes we start smelling our own exhaust, because if you're constantly with the same people, the same, all of a sudden you're all doing the same thing. And, I don't want to have that. So, and then, like I said, I have mentors that I've had for many, many years. So I appreciate, those relationships.
Yeah. When you think about key mentors, you had mentioned use of a coach, and um, how did you go about beyond, hiring the coach? How did you go about forming those mentor relationships, and what do you think makes a successful mentor-mentee relationship?
I think for me, it's getting someone out of my comfort zone. Once again, I think they're going to challenge me differently. And I think being honest, like I said, sometimes it's easier being honest with that stranger.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important. I think the accountability of a mentor is really good, or a coach, because if that means I have to have something done, on a deadline, it keeps me on track. And I also think they see me as a blank canvas. And my coach was able to, I had to do a writing assignment for her. And then after I did it, and then she goes, well, no, let's talk about, and it was fascinating where what she saw, what I wrote versus what I was writing. So I think that solid coaching advice, and I do believe in life coaches and career coaches, definitely.
That's great. When you were working internally, whether at Nordstrom or otherwise in corporate or in the nonprofit world, did the organizations have formal mentoring programs?
Nothing formal in my era of that work. I mean, today there's so great onboarding where you get a mentor, and you have, especially like in the veteran space, the ERG groups, the resource groups, that you have someone that you can check into. I know one of the big corporations, you're assigned a mentor on day one, and you meet with someone, every quarter. I mean, this is an executive you get to meet with. So I think those people help you navigate the company. And I think that's really helpful. In my era of work, we really didn't have it, but I had a mentor at Nordstrom until he retired. And I
Oh,
really felt it was hard on me because I did not have that internal person speaking and saying my name out loud in a meeting, like,
yeah.
oh, who's doing well? Oh, Monica, she's doing great. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's no one saying my name out there anymore. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's really important. And, as I said in the beginning, build your network before you need it. And that's even at every company where you work, you have to have that internal network. And I'm not calling it politics. It's just being a nice human being. And you've got to know people at your company where you work. And, if there's a team you want to get on, then start hanging out with someone from that team and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you once a quarter. I'd like to just hear about what you guys are doing. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for that, Monica, and sharing your career journey and lessons. And it's already time for our next break. So when we come back, Monica and I will talk in more detail about redefining our careers, transferring our skills, and much more. Hi, I'm Lisa Downs, career and retirement transition coach and host of Reigniting You on KIXI. I guide age 40 plus professionals to gain clarity, a renewed sense of purpose, and a career transition plan within 90 days so you can lead a fulfilling life regardless of your age. If you're not sure what's next for you, I can help. Let's talk about what your future can look like. Visit yournewaspect.com or call me at 425 216 3015. That's 425 216 3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career.
Have a career transition related question or want to share your best or worst job story? Call 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. Just leave a voicemail and we'll answer your question or share your story on a future show. Stay tuned for more Reigniting You with Lisa Downs.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that discusses timely issues and topics about career transitions for Gen Xers and Boomers. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. A reminder that if you'd like to get in touch, you can head on over to my website, yournewaspect.com. There you can take my free career transition readiness quiz, sign up to receive my free weekly career tips e-newsletter, or just send me a note. It'd be great to hear from you. That's yournewaspect.com. So we're here with executive, consultant, and advocate for veterans and military spouses, Monica McNeal. Monica, let's go ahead and jump back into our conversation. So much about mid to late career transition can be about reinvention or redefining ourselves. What advice do you have for someone going through this and coming out the other side of it successfully?
I would dig deep into those core skills, what you have, because what's really important is you probably don't have the time, or you may choose not to have the time to reinvent yourself to a point of getting a master's degree or going on to a higher education. So you kind of go back into what have I done really well? What are the common threads? How do I reinvent that? And I always say I'm very customer centric. So I always want to give great service. So if that means I give great service as a project manager or a program manager, I'm giving great service if I decide to go back into retail. But find those core skills and those things that, okay, I can do this every day. I know what I can't do. I could never do the same thing every day. I could never make a widget. Do not put me in a cube because I'd have to jump out. So kind of find what those things are, and then how do you transfer those? And today many industries are very broad in what they do, and they don't just do one thing anymore. So there's lots of opportunities within a company that you want to work for because you love the company, but you would just do a completely different role that you've been doing.
Yeah. And speaking of that, in your 24-year career at Nordstrom, how were you able to keep things interesting and grow in your career as an internal employee and avoid getting pigeonholed?
I think I said yes all the time. So I figured if someone believed in me, that they suggested a new role or a different position, then I should say yes. And it maybe goes back to my downside is I didn't manage my career, but someone believed in me enough and said, "Hey, Monica, there's this role." I mean, and then even today, I got someone who I know from my past life, and he sent me 2 jobs. He goes, "Monica, have you considered either of these? Or have you seen these?" So my job is to go, okay, I got to take a look at that. And is that something I maybe want to do? But he sees something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think it's just really important to maybe be open to opportunities. And I also believe you can create your own opportunities.
That's really cool, and so good to hear that you were able to take advantage of those internal opportunities, as well as you've got folks keeping you in mind, right, and looking out for you and supporting you in that way. And also wondering about some listeners may have an interest in nonprofit work, and curious about what you enjoyed and what you found challenging after making the switch to nonprofit.
Nonprofit for me, at least I think it needs to be mission and purpose. So if they align with who I am, there's some nonprofits I just couldn't work for or volunteer with because it's not me. So I think of finding out some of those nonprofits where it's really a passion project, maybe to start with. But some of the biggest frustration is for many nonprofits, they run it like it's a hobby. And if you have a business background, that can be extremely frustrating because you believe in efficiencies and, you're like, they're wasting money that they really don't have. And you're like, okay. But I also know that the nonprofit space, really needs people with a business mindset. So once again, there's so many things that I have done in my past life that have paid off. I mean, even recently we have that they're called stand downs, and we needed product. So, I mean, I have enough vendor relationships, so I was able to get a manufacturer to ship us 300 pair of socks, so those things never go away. Those skill sets and those relationships should never go away. So, but I'd say for the nonprofit space, it is extremely rewarding. And if you ever want to feel understaffed every day, every project, no matter what you do, you will feel understaffed. So there's no one to help. You have to get it done yourself.
Wear a lot of different hats, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, it's like, being willing to dive in and pretty much go with that all hands on deck method.
Yes, always. There's
Always.
always something sinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with needing to identify and make the case for having the right skill set when making an industry or more drastic career change, what are some strategies to do this in a way that you think would resonate with prospective employers?
I think once again, I'll just use customer centric. It's an easy one, but I have a lot of experience that I can leverage on being customer centric, and I can give examples in all industries, all roles where being a customer centric person is really helpful. I also talk a lot about being a brand ambassador because when I work for somebody, I have to represent their company always. And I go back to my days at Nordstrom. We were always told you never know who's in the elevator, so don't say anything bad. So, you
Right.
just always said nice stuff. And I think just that really just figuring out those core skills and then sharing them with the company. There's so much information on companies. I mean, I always get Google alerts on companies that I want to be on top of. I mean, you can read their annual report. There's so much information. So when you do talk to someone at that company, you can come loaded with some information and real examples on how you, once again, I'm going to use the word belong in that company.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good recommendation. And to follow up on that, when you think about customer centric, what are some behaviors or actions that people can take to really ensure they have that customer focus?
My big thing is if someone sends me a message, my job is to return it. And not that I get a lot of phone calls, but when I first left Nordstrom, people were shocked in the wholesale industry that I'd return basically every phone call. But I
Mhm.
also grew up at Nordstrom. You return every phone call, or Mr. John or Jim Nordstrom or somebody was going to let you know that you did not return a phone call.
Mhm.
So I think you walk the talk. So, like I said, Nordstrom taught me so much about customer service, and I don't know how not to give great service because that is just my part of my DNA. And at other companies, you can lead by example by showing that you can return those phone calls and you can be polite. And that's internal and external customer service because you have to work with your workers, and then you have to be the brand ambassador on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that approach, the being the brand ambassador. And, being here in the Seattle area, Nordstrom has such a great reputation too for that customer focus and has always had such a high standard. Um, so I think that's great that you were able to work there for so many years and really build your career there over time. And then, lately, your more recent work working with veterans, what did you see as the biggest challenges they had moving from the military into civilian careers? And what do you advise folks in this situation do to land their next role?
If we want to talk about people reinventing themselves, that is really reinventing.
Yeah.
Not all military hard skills of what they do as their job are transferable. And I'll use the worst case example, but if you're in the infantry, you're probably not going to get hired in too many positions for that skill. But your transferable skills become extremely important. And that's why companies like to hire military because one, they know how to show up on time, even if it's at 5 a.m., because that's what they were told to do for the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. They have leadership classes all the time. They have young people are leading, large groups of people at a very young age. They have follow through. Their communication has to be exact. You cannot say something is a 0.2 over centimeter and it's, 2 miles. I mean, you have to be really good in your communication skills. So their transferable skills work on the soft skills. Where they struggle is most of them don't have a network outside the military. So then I have to open their eyes up to look at this entire military, network you have. Not all of them are in anymore. Where are they working? Use your alumni association. So it's just tweaking them to think, but they have been thinking in a very different culture, but there's also different cultures within each branch. And there's different, as you know, and then every company has their own culture. So I think they just, their transition is a little steeper because many of them have never held a civilian job. They went possibly in straight after college or straight from high school. And in ones that went straight in after education, they've never written a resume in their entire life. So they could be 40 getting out after 20 years and have never written a resume because they've never needed one. So there's some of those skills and, the game that we have to play to get a job in the civilian market, they just don't know the rules. So you kind of have to give them the rules of the game. They're all smart, so they'll figure it out. So that's kind of the great part.
Seems like a pretty tough and interesting transition. And likewise, what do you see as the most common challenges supporting military spouses to land a job, and how can those challenges be overcome?
Yeah, military spouses, especially active duty ones, they tend to have to pick up and move. It's just part of the military culture, which then gives them holes in their resume because they've had to take time off. Sometimes they, actually qualify for reentry programs. They're extremely highly educated because in their free time, most of them have gone on and have, secondary, education. A lot of them have master's degrees, and they also volunteer a lot. So you're getting a great, kind person who's highly educated, who just because of the situation cannot often stay in a job for long. So remote work, telework is, really ideal for military spouses. But they are, as a population, highly educated, determined, resourceful. I mean, you want to talk about a bunch of resourceful men and women who are spouses, they know how to get it done.
Yeah. I can only imagine, with what all they do, and just the working with change all the time, and can only imagine what their skill sets are like, and how impressive it must be. And also wondering any additional recommendations you have for how older workers can sell themselves well and make the case that they're the right person for the job and belong with an organization.
I hate to go back, but I'll say it's a little bit of the network. Who do you know internally at that company who can give you that internal push, because your resume could get lost in the ever famous black hole. So having that, I think you need to be current and relevant. You still need to be what skills are going on. And, if you don't know what the term CRM stands for and it's in the resume, that boy, you better Google that and start going, oh, I got to learn CRM. I've got to know what CRM, or I got to at least have some knowledge of it. And like I said, I like the internal approach. I like the networking. There are really great people out there who are willing to help.
That's great. And when it comes to, just by way of follow up, you had mentioned a couple times about transferable skills. What advice do you have for what we can do specifically to do that skill transfer? What does that look like?
I guess the best way to answer that is, if are you talking a soft skill or hard skill? I should maybe ask that.
Either.
Okay. So if it's a hard skill, once again, is it current and relevant? Do you have to get your certification renewed? Make sure you're current and you're ready to go so you can get hired. On soft skills, have all those great stories, because everyone likes a story. So give yourself that chance to be the storyteller. And, you can learn a lot from just looking at different companies, ads and what their point of view is, or read their mission statement, and then find out how your transferable skills, if they are, people skills, if they're, like I said, customer centric, whatever the case may be, but you can definitely get those articulated in your interview and on your resume.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that you bring up that word storytelling. There's a lot out there these days about telling your story. What has been helpful for you to do that, to really be able to show your value and tell your story?
It's been a challenge. I have a little bit of a journalism background, so I'm very short, and I don't like. And I also, one of my bosses at Nordstrom, I could never do anything if it was past one page. So if I was writing a proposal, I had a great idea, it was one page. So I've learned brevity is not always the best. So learning how to storytell, I think it's really practicing once again with your mentor or coach, because you have to be able to tell the story still succinct, because no interviewer wants to hear you go rambling on and on and on, which I'm probably doing. So I think that definitely I had to practice and just, be authentic, be you. I always tell everyone, just as the big buzzword out there in employment is everyone's looking for the unicorn, hence why we have all those jobs open and we have all these people looking for a job. So, what's the approach that you have, what's the unicorn job that you're looking for? And that's where I go, well, where do you belong?
Yeah.
And immediately also that if you're through the interview, it's if you got a connection there.
Yeah.
And if it's not there, then is this really where you want to be? And I think that's really important. And no one's going to be at any job for 24 years again. I don't think those days are around. So, you want to, I always say I want to add value on day one. And that's really important to me. I don't need anyone to pat me on the back. I just want to say I can save you money. I'm going to make you money. Those are the things I like to do.
That's great. And Monica, last question is, how can people find you if they'd like to get in touch?
The best place is LinkedIn. It's just under Monica M. McNeal. That's McNeal. And my feed's pretty heavy in the veteran space because that's where I'm currently and have been, and still volunteer like a crazy woman in the military space.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Monica, for being here and sharing your insights and recommendations for our audience. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and have a wonderful day.
You too. And it's time to wrap up today's show. And that means it's also time for my reignition recommendation, your weekly career transition tip, regardless of your age. And my tip for you this week is to move from I can't to why not? So, when thinking about what you want to do next or your job prospects and making that career transition, or transitioning into, your retirement or semi-retirement phase, and perhaps you're looking for some flexibility. Rather than focusing on what seems impossible, improbable, or unrealistic and, immediately thinking, well, I can't do that because of this, or I can't do that because of, this other thing, or because of this, that, and a third thing. Reframe that to thinking about, well, why not? Why not? Why can't I go after this? Why can't I position myself to take the leap and do this next thing? Why can't I? Why not? And it's really just a way, when you reverse that and reframe it to really broaden your perspective, broaden your horizons, and what you may want to look into in terms of what's next for you. So rather than I can't, ask yourself, well, why not? Just a reminder that if you'd like to get in touch, you can head on over to my website, yournewaspect.com. There you can download and take my free career transition readiness quiz. You can also sign up for my free weekly career tips e-newsletter, as well as send me a note and get in touch. It would be great to hear from you. That's yournewaspect.com. Well, thanks, Eric, for your support today. So what were some takeaways for you from our time with Monica?
Great conversation. I mean, and such a important field actually that she's in. I mean, we've got so many veterans in
Oh,
this
yeah.
area, with it being, a big military area with, joint base McCord, Lewis in the South End, and of course,
Yeah.
in Bremerton, the naval presence. So, I mean, this is important stuff for
It
sure. And
really
so,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, lots of great tips and recommendations for sure.
Hmm.
Well, join us next Monday at 3 o'clock when my guest will be Dave Montour, a career development manager who will walk us through what it's like to transition from the military into civilian life and work. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week on Reigniting You.